Okay, we are in Numbers chapter 30 today. Verse 1. Then Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of the sons of Israel, saying, This is the word which the Lord has commanded. If a man makes a vow to the Lord, or takes an oath to bind himself with a binding obligation, he shall not violate his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. This echoes in the New Testament, seen in Matthew chapter 5, verse 37, which says, But let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is of evil. And in James chapter 5, verse 12, which says, But above all, my brethren, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth, or with any other oath, but your yes is to be yes, and your no, no, so that you may not fall under judgment. So speak your word. All right, verse 3. Also, if a woman makes a vow to the Lord, and binds herself by an obligation in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears her vow and her obligation by which she has bound herself, and her father says nothing to her, then all her vows shall stand, and every obligation by which she has bound herself shall stand. But if her father should forbid her on the day he hears of it, none of her vows or her obligations by which she has bound herself shall stand. And the Lord will forgive her because of her father, because her father had forbidden her. Verse 6. However, if she should marry while under her vows, or the rash statement of her lips by which she has bound herself, and her husband hears of it and says nothing to her on the day he hears it, then her vow shall stand, and her obligations by which she has bound herself shall stand. Verse 8. But if on the day her husband hears of it, he forbids her, then he shall annul her vow which she is under, and the rash statement of her lips by which she has bound herself, and the Lord will forgive her. A father or a husband could overrule the vow of a daughter or a wife, but a man's silence, if he knew of the vow, meant it must be accomplished. And I don't know what vows specifically these may be referring to, taking out the trash or what. But the point is, if you promise you're going to do something, you need to do it. All right, verse 9. But the vow of a widow or of a divorced woman, everything by which she has bound herself, shall stand against her. However, if she vowed in her husband's house, or bound herself by an obligation with an oath, and her husband heard it, but said nothing to her and did not forbid her, then all her vows shall stand, and every obligation by which she bound herself shall stand. Verse 12. But if her husband indeed annuls them on the day he hears them, then whatever proceeds out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the obligation of herself, shall not stand. Her husband has annulled them, and the Lord will forgive her. I mean, it makes me wonder what these people were promising one another. But again, we see here the order of creation with a husband and wife having separate roles and different orders of authority. This is seen in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 23, which states, For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ also is the head of the church, he himself being the Savior of the body. Verse 13, Every vow and every binding oath to humble herself, her husband may confirm it, or her husband may annul it. But if her husband indeed says nothing to her from day to day, then he confirms all her vows or all her obligations which are on her. He has confirmed them, because he said nothing to her on the day he heard them. But if he indeed annuls them after he has heard them, saying like, no honey, we're not going to Disneyland today, then he shall bear her guilt. Verse 16, These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses, as between a man and his wife, and as between a father and his daughter, while she is in her youth and in her father's house. So if my daughter tells me she'll be home before 10 p.m. when she's older, I'm going to show her Numbers chapter 30 as a nice little reminder. Okay, guys, thanks for being here. God bless you.